Chair recognizes Mr. Grothman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Yes, I'd like to focus a little bit on the Department of Defense, arguably the most important department because our freedom depends upon them doing a good, efficient job. First of all, the Department of Defense financial management and contractor management have been on the GAO's high-risk list since the early 90s. Why is that?
The financial management part, and I'll ask Mr. DiNapoli to talk about contract management, but on the financial management, they've been unable to pass the test of an independent audit. They're the only major federal agencies that have been unable to pass the test of an audit. Their financial systems and controls are not sufficient. There have been hundreds of identified weaknesses by people who are doing the audits now. For many years, the department didn't try to do a financial audit. But in the last 5 years, they have, and they're making some good progress in that area. They're finding good benefits from the financial audits. They're finding helicopters they didn't know they had on the books. They're finding lots of supplies. They're saving some money for not reordering things that they already have. So there's some benefits to it, but the main reason is they haven't been able to pass the test of an independent audit, financial audit.
Why compared to other agencies is the Department of Defense so much worse? Is it arrogance? Is it ignorance? What would you attribute it to?
Well, a part of it's scale. For a number of years, it was lack of effort, to be honest with you. I mean, the requirement's been in place since 1996. For about a decade or so, they really just certified they were unauditable and didn't do it. More recently, there's been commitment in the last 2 administrations, and I've been very pleased about it. And they're starting to take it seriously. They recognize they need it in order to manage more efficiently and effectively. But it's a big agencies, and there's not a lot of standardization across the department. So there's a lot of decentralized efforts, and therefore the systems are unable to exchange information properly.
Okay, thanks. In November of 2022, Defense failed its 5th consecutive audit. It was unable to account for 61% of its $3.5 trillion in assets. What are the reasons why the DoD can't produce a clean audit?
A couple of reasons. One, their financial systems are unable to, or are not reliable in a number of cases. Secondly, they don't have good internal controls over their property, over their inventory systems, and that's a problem. They also don't have the full type of skills in their workforce that they need in those areas, and so it's a myriad of issues.
Could you elaborate on they don't have the skills? How is this possible they don't have the skills?
Well, there are not enough people. I mean, if you haven't, this is the issue. For over 200 years, the federal government operated without any financial statements or independent financial audits. We started in the 90s. So this wasn't a big priority in those areas. And then for a number of years, the department didn't think they needed to do this. And so they didn't build the capacity that they need in those areas. Most of the expertise in financial management in the federal government's been in the budget area, not in preparing financial statements and auditing, or to have the systems people necessary to produce those statements. So they're trying and they're making improvements, but I still think they need additional skills to be able to do this.
And we'll jump ahead here. What's the dollar figure for waste the GAO has identified at the Pentagon? And this number will include the GAO alone and not include the Department of Defense Inspector General's numbers.
Yeah. We're working on a figure now for government-wide waste. So far, the only figure we've come up with has been for the unemployment insurance program, which is over $60 billion at the low end of the range.
Okay. Department of Defense last estimated that in 2014, contractors were in possession of $220 billion in government-furnished property, but GAO says that number is significantly understated. Why does GAO believe that?
I'll ask Mr. DiNapoli to respond.
Thank you for the question. It's a lot about about the similar issues that Gene mentioned with regard to financial management also occur in the property management system. So having the proper records, having the information technology systems to govern that process, and then having the folks to do the proper oversight of those, all combined to having information about the amount of government property in contractors' hands probably being excessively low.
Okay, I'll give you a little different question. I sometimes feel, they always say generals are fighting the last war. And I look at stuff like aircraft carriers, which when they have war games get sunk right away. Do you guys have any comments on the Department of Defense, or maybe even shouldn't say the Department of Defense, our Appropriations Committee and Armed Services funding weaponry that may not be up to snuff or wouldn't last very long in a 21st century war?
So thank you for that question. And that is another high-risk area in our weapons systems work, which has also been on the high-risk list since 1990. And what we've continually found through the past 30 years is the Department of Defense continually buys weapons systems in a manner that results in cost overruns and schedule delays, and often doesn't provide the warfighters what they need when they need it.
Thank you very much. I think I think our Department of Defense, and quite frankly, some people in this building are a little bit embarrassing as far as protecting our country. But thank you for letting me go a little over.